Welcome, everybody. Joe Tarnowski with ECRM here, and I want to thank you all for joining us. Today's guest is Carman Allison, the VP of Consumer Insights with NielsenIQ, and he's going to share some insights on the omnichannel household care shopper based on research from the company's new Omnishopper Solutions Suite, which was released just earlier this month. And that means that this is among the first, if not the first, presentation based on the new platform, which NielsenIQ developed to enhance the industry's understanding of evolving consumer behaviors, which, as we all know, are increasingly omnichannel. So now, just a quick heads up, you have a Canadian and a New Yorker here. I'll let you guess which one is which. So you'll have to adjust from one accent to the other as we make our way through the slides, fireside chat style. So, Carman, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to hand it off to you to kick it off.
Thank you very much, Joe, for those kind words. So hopefully I think people have figured out which is which, and I'll probably have to make sure I liven up my Canadian accents as we go through the presentation.
There you go.
So as Joe had mentioned, we're so excited to share with you a new capability we just launched, and I know you said earlier this month, but it was actually launched last week. So last month, earlier this month sounds a little bit longer. So last week, it's hot off the press. This is the first time that we've been running the information specifically for the cleaning-based category. So if you think about the power of OmniShopper and why it's so important is because you think about how fragmented the marketplace is now. Every consumer has a different path to purchase. Every consumer has a different retailer, and a lot of us have changed our behaviors over the last year as well. So what OmniShopper does, it brings it all together where, in the past you had, store POS, we had some e-commerce, you had, pure players like Amazon, and it was all in bits and pieces. And a lot of challenges that both manufacturers and retailers had is they had to kind of put together the pieces together on their own. And now OmniShopper brings it all under one umbrella. So I'm really, really excited to share with you some really powerful insight that we've been able to provide with this new capability. So before we get into some of the OmniShopper and cleaning specific data, we really want to kind of start very macro and talk about, the year that was and also the challenges that are still further ahead. So Joe, if I had to ask you one, how would you describe last year in one word?
Interesting.
Interesting. Okay, good. And that's kind of where we're going to, I'm glad you said that, because as we go through the presentation, we're going to see a lot of interesting insights, and I would call it unprecedented, and if I had to use one word. And the consumer journey that we've been on over the last year, we're not done with it yet. So no surprise when we survey consumers, 2/3 of us said that we changed how we shopped, and this is probably the first time in all of the history of research where we've had a consumer trend such as COVID-19 impact every single consumer in some shape or another. And it's impacted pretty like every country in the world as well. So it's a global trend. So no surprise, I don't know about you, but I changed my shopping behaviors. Like we avoided the stores like the plague. We saw more of us, shift online, and my baskets were getting bigger. I started putting more things into my shopping cart than I typically didn't in the past, as well as I stayed from home. So I'm part of that 66%. And if you think about, where it's going, we're even though we're having vaccines and about half of the U.S. population is vaccinated, we're kind of on that road to recovery. We're still not out of the woods yet, right? And even based on this survey here, about 81% of us are going to continue to restruct our spending this year. So obviously with the vaccine, we got to keep in mind that there's still a lot of people out there that, are vaccine resistant, the anti-vaxxers. So we're not going to get to 100% compliance on the vaccine. So we're potentially going to continue to see, outbreaks pop up. And right now we're starting to see parts of the country start to resurge again with increases in outbreaks, such as Michigan. And now there's a wave 4 in some areas as well. So it talks about a lot of uncertainty out there. And I think a lot of consumers are still a little bit nervous about kind of going back to that routine.
I think you hit it right on the head with the word uncertainty, because you just don't know. We're still in that space where you don't know what's going to happen the next year, because like you said, it's still starting to pop up in different places, yet other places are opening up a lot. So, and then even if it opens up fully, we don't know how many people are going to feel comfortable resuming their normal activities as they did in 2019. And who's going to be more cautious. So that uncertainty is going to be around for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about some of the game changers and some of the big trends that impacted consumer packaged goods in the last year. And a lot of these trends, even though they're kind of, magnified last year, they're still kind of staying with us as we migrate through 21 as well. So let's just start at the left-hand side. So, we saw a big shift in how consumers were spending their money. So think about the share of wallet. We saw a shift from perimeter to the center of the store. Now, if you kind of go back a few years ago, I've been at conferences and just kind of hearing other people talk about the center of store is dead, right? And that was actually probably a term that was misused, because the center store has never been completely dead. It changed, obviously, and I think where some categories were showing contraction, as consumer preferences changed. But at the end of the day, the center store still was growing. It was growing much less so than the perimeter of the store. The perimeter is what was getting all the focus, right? So every time a retailer opened up a new store, they always contracted that amount of real estate that was for the center of the store, and they put more focused on fresh, meal solution, that whole grocerant component as well, where you can go and sit down and have a meal. Well, COVID-19 just kind of changed that the mix up. The rules are rewritten, right? Because retailers had to close down some of that section of the store. Consumers were nervous about buying products that were out in the open, right? So we saw everyone migrate back to the center of the store. And it was for a few reasons, right? If you think about the fact that we were forced to start cooking again, right? We're staying at home, we're cooking meals from scratch, which means we had to go into the center store to get ingredients. But with that came, a lot of growth around even cleaning products, right? Because they're in the center of the store. So we saw like paper products, cleaning products, just dramatic growth. And in some cases, the shelves were empty because there was so much traffic driving to that section of the store.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I never bought a frozen vegetable package until COVID. Never, literally never in my life did I buy frozen vegetables. And now I have like three different stashes. I have especially during April, May of last year, I had what I called my doomsday stash. That was just all center store stuff, shelf stable cans, 2 cases of like Cliff bars. That's, just in case everything closed down and I had to just live on what I had. Then I would have like those in between things that I would dip into from time to time. And then I'd have the fresh that I would just really focus on fresh foods for the moment, knowing
Yeah.
that I had that stash just in case.
Right. And that was a lot of people, I think, and I think even if you look at frozen fruits and vegetables, they kind of became popular. And I think a lot of manufacturers took advantage of the fact that they wanted to re-educate consumers on the freshness, the value, the quality of frozen products. And those products have really evolved over time as well, right? So that's been a big game changer. But what you described as your behavior is what a lot of us did, in the sense that we pantry loaded. We became prepared. We stockpiled. We became a bunch of hoarders in our own home, right? As far as, what's for dinner tonight? Well, I'm not going to run to the store because I'm trying to avoid the store. I'm going to, shop my pantry or shop my freezer to prepare that meal before I make the next trip. So I think that was something. Then you have less food waste as well with buying frozen and other products. So you're not alone in that. All right, the next trend, we saw a big shift in how we shopped, right? So I don't know about you, but I was very much a routine shopper. I kind of shopped very consistently on the same day of the week and kind of the same time of day. And having the fact that we were forced to stay at home, and I'm no longer a commuter, right? I'm still working from home, is that I used to shop a lot. My office was a 15-minute drive out to the suburbs, and I would work in my office. I'd maybe run to Costco or another retailer at lunch, grab a few things, and then I would stop and do some shopping on my commute home, just because I'm kind of, multitasking, right? And now all of a sudden those behaviors change, because now I'm shopping closer to home, and I'm not driving to the Costco because it's actually too far away. And where I live, there's not a Costco that's a convenient close to my home. So we were making fewer trips. And now we've rerouted consumers to these new destinations, part of it online, part of it to different stores. And think about the fact that, some retailers, and I'll use Walgreens maybe as an example, where, if there's a Walgreens in the core of the city, like say Chicago, where, they've been doing a lot of, prepared meals and to kind of hit that lunch crowd and really expanding their offerings as well. Well, a lot of their audience, as far as those corporate workers on those office towers during the day, have disappeared. So we actually did an analysis late last year. We called it Golden Stores. It was something we did across many countries across the world, and the US was one of them as well, where we looked at the stores that account for 80% of sales pre-COVID versus during COVID. And what we saw is that a lot of those top performing stores fell down the ranks and other stores moved up the ranks. So we've actually seen a change in the mix of what's driving volume right now as consumers, rerouted and changed some of their purchasing behaviors to some of these new retail formats.
Yeah, I saw that too, actually, with a lot of people switching channels. Like convenience stores was an interesting case because they lost their morning traffic. Nobody's going to the office, whatever, but they gained in the afternoon because people, especially in March, in April and May of last year, they were avoiding grocery stores and the crowds there. So they would just go into convenience stores to get their staples. And so they had to switch up their assortments to adjust to that, their bigger pack sizes, things like that. And but people are now going back to grocery stores. I'm not one of them because I'm sure everybody knows by now I live in New York. I'm the New Yorker here. So I live in Queens. I have a whole bunch of stores right outside my door. So instead of going to grocery stores, I started going to a natural organic market. And I would just go like every day at odd hours, like 10 in the morning. I'd jump in for 10 minutes, grab a few things, bring it out. But I actually enjoy it. I enjoy the food there. Like you said, we're cooking more at home. So I'm getting all healthy stuff there. And now it's just a new routine. So like my rerouted routine has become my routine now.
Right. And I think we've all developed new habits, right? And so those habits and changes are now becoming the new routines. And some of those things are going to stick with us, right? Because we've learned, because I think a lot of people were hesitant even with shopping online, like, I'm not sure how this works. What if I'm not home and all these things. So everyone has figured out, that there's many options, right, for delivery, the click and collect, having things sent to another distribution center to be held for you when you're ready to pick it up. And even convenience stores have got in that game as now as well, that you can actually have your groceries delivered to a locker at, say, a convenience store, some of those online shopping. And so that's good for them because it's bringing that foot traffic that to their store. And then when you're there to pick up something, then you may just grab a few other things and put it in your shopping basket as well. All right, the next trend, and we're going to actually show you some examples of the next trend. So I'm just going to talk about this one very quickly because I'll wait till I show you the slide on this one. But we obviously saw a shift in spending power. So if you think about consumers' ability and willingness to spend over last year, COVID hasn't been fair to consumers. It's actually created more polarization in the shopping power of consumers. So there's a lot of us that are insulated, and I would say probably you and myself have been insulated by the fact that we're still working. We're working differently, but I don't know about you, but I've been saving money in the sense that I'm cooking from home. I haven't been able to go on a vacation. I'm not buying, work clothes and because I'm just kind of, working from home has just changed a lot of my needs and actually result, I'm just saving money. But then there's obviously the flip side of that is that that for those people, particularly those people in the food service industry or service industries as in general, they were the ones that initially saw a lot of job loss and their industries have been impacted to the greatest degree. So a lot of those consumers were constrained. But it's also important to understand that people were constrained even before COVID came in, right? Because there was a lot of people that, were maybe on social assistance or using food stamps, et cetera. So there was always that concern of consumers out there that didn't have the spending power that the rest of the population had. And COVID just magnified it even more so.
Definitely. And some of what was interesting is some of the constrained people, you mentioned like the service industry, some of them actually ended up doing better with the enhanced unemployment and the stimulus checks. Some of them ended up doing much better during that period than if they were working. So it's just the consumer behavior has gone in so many different directions and people have been impacted in so many different ways. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last one, I'm just going to touch on it very lightly as well, because we're going to dig into this one. This is really the shift that talks about why we need an omni-shopper view of the marketplace is that, if you looked at the fastest growing retail channel last year, online was the fastest retail format. No surprise. A lot of people just shifted a lot of those spending online. But if you go through the list of retail channels when it comes to consumer packaged goods, the majority of them were actually reporting double-digit growth, because once again we're staying at home, we're eating at home. So grocery stores were increasing, warehouse clubs, the mass merchandisers, most of those retailers were doing really, really well. The one that probably didn't benefit to the huge degree was drugstores. Drugstores were relatively static, saw some growth, but not the same level of growth that we saw for those retailers that are really, really focused on food. So food first was obviously, it's a survival, it's a need, obviously a basic need. And we saw a lot of those retailers that focus on food just benefit naturally because drugstores are getting into the food game. But once again, if we're going to make one trip out, we're going to go to the retail format that has most of the things I need on my list, right? And that's why they benefit over some of those kind of convenience and smaller store formats.
Yeah, and a lot of them actually in the GM categories, the grocers benefited, because if I need some office supplies and my grocer's got some, why should I make a few different stops? Just get everything there. Or for pet, or instead of going to a pet specialty store like, someone might have normally done, they're just going to do one trip and get it done at the grocery store.
Absolutely. All right, so let's dig into some of the numbers, because this is all conceptual. It's nice, but I'm sure everyone's going, well, how important is insulated, constrained, offline, and whatnot? So obviously, I'm doing a disservice. I'm not going to show you the numbers. So NielsenIQ, obviously, we have all the numbers. So let's dig into some of the actual numbers itself. So I talked about the importance of constrained and insulated, and so even though I talked about those two groups, we recently did a survey with our consumer panel, and now we're segmenting 4 groups, because as the pandemic continues to linger on, it impacts more of us and it changes our behavior over time. So let's start at the left-hand side. So constrained existing. So 15% of the US population fall into that group. So part of those groups are people that were constrained before COVID, but it's really the people that were initially hit by COVID. So that falls into that, where their spending power is really still restricted. Now, it's interesting, if you look at their consumer packaged goods spending, their spending still increased, because obviously, once again, food is a necessity, but we saw a shift in where they spent those dollars. So once again, they changed some of that consumption from out of home to in home, right? So they shifted, and then obviously we know it's cheaper to cook a meal than it is to go out to a restaurant and buy a meal. So that's a saving strategy, and as a result, it's also a limitation. We couldn't do that. So that's why we still see this group continue to grow when it comes to consumer packaged goods. Now, what's really interesting is that we have 60% of the people that have actually shifted. They've either moved down and they've become a little bit more cautious or newly constrained. And that's really the concern that we're seeing as well, because we're now, a year and a month with this pandemic, and it continues to linger on, and we're going to continue to see this impact on consumer spending. So newly impacted spending due to COVID-19, that's 31% of us are newly constrained. And once again, as the pandemic went on, we saw more job loss. And once again, job loss itself could be just one member in your household, or if you're a dual income earner, one could impact your spending. But if you're a single household income, obviously job loss is going to deplete your spending power as well. And then the next group, insulated, cautious, 29%. These are people where, their spending power, their financial needs haven't changed. They're still working. They still have the same spending power, but now they're taking a second look and they're saying, I'm going to be a little bit cautious. I'm going to really, look, just kind of think about how I'm going to spend my money. Now, I fall into this group. I'm one of the 29%. I'd consider myself insulated, cautious. And the reason why I've switched from insulated, unrestricted, well, in January, I went and bought a home, right? I bought a new home, which, so now I'm back to having a big mortgage, where before I didn't have that. So so I've now, my finances have changed in the sense that my spending power, because I'm putting more of my focus on my mortgage. But then I'm looking at things like, well, what's going to happen to interest rates, right? What's going to happen to other taxes? Because all of this kind of free money and stimulus that's been put out there to kind of prop up the economy, well, that has to be regained somehow. So it may not be consumer tax. It could be other types of service taxes, or even, corporate tax is obviously one that the administration's looking to increase as well. So that obviously comes back to the consumer. If taxes go up in a corporation, then we potentially may see prices rise. So, and at the end of the day, the consumer is always impacted by some form of increases. And then finally, 25%, so 1/4 of us, they're that unrestricted, money's no object right now. They can go out and buy what they want when they want. So there's a lot of pent up demand, right? Out there with consumers right now. And we're starting to see some really interesting trends where people are now starting to splurge, right? So, so even if you look at the cuts of meat people are buying, these insulated consumers, they're now starting to spend more money on those higher cuts of meats. And really what they're trying to do is bring home that out of home, that restaurant experience into the home. And now they're, starting to spend a little bit more money on themselves because I can't go on vacation. I can't, go to the spa like I was. So now they're trying to create that spa experience in their home. And we see things like bath additives, aromatherapy, all of these categories just showing dramatic growth right across the board as well.
Yeah, I would fall within that group. I mean, I've been working home remotely for the past 7 years. So my life hasn't changed in that area, but I used to go out and eat a lot outside. So with that changing, it frees up a lot. And I've been buying, grass-fed ribeyes and organic food. And, the other thing that complemented that was also a greater focus on health and wellness, like everybody has, because, they want to kind of make themselves stronger against stronger immune system. So those two things, I'm spending more on food, but I'm making it at home. So that ribeye is only $18 instead of 40 or $50 if I ate it in a restaurant.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're not alone in that. And so when you go through these different consumer segments, NielsenIQ, we're going to be updating these on a quarterly basis as we kind of migrate through 21, just because we're going to continue to see shifts there as people go back to work, and as the market starts to open up a little bit more, we may see more people shifting more to the right hand side of the chart as well. But we have to keep in mind that this recovery that we're going to experience is probably going to be very polarizing, like a K recovery, right? So those consumers that are insulated, we're going to probably see their spending power come back greatly. That potentially could also impact cleaning categories in the sense that as we move back to eating out of home, I don't know about you, but all this time I've been eating at home, I've been making more of a mess, right? So I've been using more cleaning products, more paper products to kind of clean up after myself. So we have to think about the fact that as people start moving back to those old behaviors, it may, create a more of a normalized trend as it relates to cleaning and paper products. But on the flip side, those consumers that are continuing to, be constrained, they still may continue to eat at home, which cleaning products may be having demand. But also keep in mind their spending power is not as strong. So they may be looking for more value, whether it's private label. Maybe they're looking for a multi-purpose cleaner. Like I'm not going to buy a cleaner that does every single task, which we know that there's a lot of options out there, that they may just stick to more of a multi-purpose cleaner and then just go through that versus a toilet cleaner, a glass cleaner, et cetera, for all those different surfaces. Okay, so that gives us a kind of a rundown on the consumer. And like I said, we'll be updating this. So you'll have to stay tuned with our website because we'll continue to update this as we migrate through the year. So even though we saw, consumers being impacted, very differently and a lot of polarization, the impact of our industry is that we've been benefiting from this because a lot of this polarization we're seeing has probably hit other industries harder than it's impacted consumer packaged goods. So this is 52 weeks up to the first week of April this year. So this week's just a couple weeks, this data is just a couple weeks old as well. So we're still trending well above average, up about 8% if we round out after Q1. So up 8%. If we looked at 2020 in isolation, is about 11% growth. So that rate of growth is starting to slow down a little bit because now some of these periods are being trended to some of those record-setting periods that we saw last year, particularly in the March, where sales went up almost 60% for one given week, et cetera. So if we look at household care products, they're still benefiting. So once again, these cleaning categories are still seeing growth that's following along with CPG because there's a correlation. The more you eat, the more you cook, the more you make a mess, the more you have to clean. It's just a continuous circle, right? But obviously with us staying at home, we've seen categories like laundry. Like I'm just not changing my clothes as often, right? I'm not going to the gym. I'm not, I maybe just, if I don't have a camera interview like today, maybe I'm dressed a little bit more casual. So I'm not doing laundry to the same degree. So those are kind of normalized as well. We're seeing that growth around 2%.
Yeah, I'm always casual, even when I'm wearing my work shirt.
I know. Well, I noticed my shirt. I shouldn't have wore stripes because it's creating a bit of an eye test for some people. So I realized that I should have went with a solid color like yourself. So good to hear. All right. So even though we're seeing this dramatic growth of 8%, I alluded to in the very upfront summary that one of the fastest growing retail channels was online. So online itself, and I think a lot of times online gets dismissed because it's still fairly small in the scheme of things when you think about share of wallet. But it's now getting really, really substantial critical mass. So how big was online last year? Well, for consumer packaged goods, it generated $160 billion in sales. So, that's obviously something that we can't ignore. And you think about every share point is worth, billions and billions of dollars. That's how much volume has been shifting over. So it is getting, critical mass now as far as from a share perspective, where it's now sitting a little bit shy of 13% at 12.6. And so now it's starting to get a lot of attention from a lot of retailers and manufacturers, because everyone's looking for growth. Everyone's going after the same shopper, and that shopper has shifted, right? And we've shifted from into the physical stores to online. So look at that growth on the right-hand side, up 58%. So there's been a lot of dollars that have shifted over that's really fueling the $160 billion sales we saw last year. So what are the drivers, right? And first of all, we had a lot of newbies come on board, right? 22 million new online shoppers. Now, this is not meaning that they're new to online in general, because these are people that are new to buying consumer packaged goods online, right? So maybe they're doing their vacation and buying clothing online, but now they've stuck their foot in the CPG pool online and started buying. And now we have 40% of us are omni shoppers. And what I mean by an omni shopper is those people that are splitting their spending and their trips between both online and bricks and mortar or those physical stores. So these are people that are shopping both locations. And that's why it's very important for us to pay attention to them, because they're making their decisions and they're going either one side of the fence or the other, right? And they're shopping both formats, because if your product isn't in retailer A, well, you go online, you can probably find that brand, right? So the universe is a little bit different. So we now want to understand, when you go online, are you sticking with the same brand, or are you actually switching to another brand? So we know that shopping online, there's way more choice than in a physical store. So that can impact loyalty. It really puts loyalty up to the challenge as well. But one thing that's interesting when we look at, that growth that we're seeing, and even though we have a lot of new people shopping and moving online, they are still spending more, right? We know that people like online, and they tend to, score it fairly high in satisfaction surveys around their fulfillment needs. And we see an increase of about 43% there as well.
Yeah, I certainly have become a much more omni-channel shopper myself, especially when it comes to traditional CPG items. It's just too easy. I mean, I live in an apartment building. The delivery person just brings it in. And, depending on how they deliver it, if it's the post office, the USPS, they can let themselves in and just drop it off in the foyer. Otherwise, they just drop it right at the front door, but it's a kind of closed in area. So we don't have that much of a problem with theft. So it's just too easy. It's way too easy to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's even interesting if you look at even new condominiums and apartment buildings that are being reformatted or built, they're actually now putting space in their mail rooms and in their, outside their lobby and that general consensus area where people now can have delivery boxes, right? And it's now becoming part of the architecture of how people are building, homes and even condominiums to allow for at-home delivery, because they see it as that's not going away. Just like people now are putting, electric car charging stations in condominiums. Now we're starting to see more of these, drop boxes now in those common and in those areas where people, live in shared spaces as well. All right, so that gives us a sense of how big online shopping is and how it's changing the omni shopper. Now let's kind of get a little bit closer to home here and talk about how it's impacting household care. And no surprise, it's actually having a greater influence on these types of categories. So when you look at the growth, if you think back the previous slide, it was plus 58%. Well, we're now seeing, if you look at the green bar area, it's 64% growth. And the physical stores are basically just holding on. If you think of offline, the physical stores are growing at 1%. So they're not keeping pace. So if you think about the fact the marketplace is up 8, so those physical stores are obviously losing share of wallet as more of the consumers shift their spending online. You go across all the different categories we have outlined here, it's a similar story where, online is outperforming bricks and mortar dramatically. And in some cases, like, look at laundry detergent, it's actually declining in physical stores because people prefer to buy that online. And it could be part of a routine purchase. It could be a subscription-based thing as well that, if as we continue to do laundry at the same amount per week, we probably have the same needs to refill and replenish at the same needs. So that's a perfect example of a category that would work really well.
And plus,
for
it's like dog food. People
Yeah.
just don't want to lug a big jug of laundry detergent home when someone else can just bring it to their door. So it's just
exactly
so much easier that way.
I know. Well, I've my mother. She's in her late 80s. I won't give out the actual number just to protect her a little bit. But anyways, I laugh at her and in a good way. I mean, I tease her because I go to visit her and I'm like, Mom, why do you have this big, huge jug of laundry detergent powder? There's tabs, there's concentrated formats, right? So now I'm at the point where I buy these things and take it home to her because she can't even lift the thing. It's too large because she likes to buy in bulk as well because it's a saving strategy, right?
Yeah.
They said you can buy these concentrated formats. So when you were telling that story, it kind of reminded me of my mother doing the same thing as well.
It just makes sense, and you could see all these categories here. I mean, they're all aligned with people spending more time at home. And if they're spending more time at home, they need these products and they're home to accept the deliveries. So it just makes sense that it'll just be online. And a lot of these products lend themselves to subscription formats too.
Yep. Yeah. And a lot of them just benefited obviously with the demands that consumers had. So look at disinfecting wipes, right? And I made the joke earlier that, I mean, when I was talking to in our previous meeting, that disinfecting wipes became the new Bitcoin. It was in such demand and you ran to the section of the store, it was always sold out. So it didn't mean the sale was lost 100% because it was sold out, particularly in the physical store, but then consumers just went online because they could find it somewhere and they could search for it across every single retailer, which why we saw, it actually winning, growing at 195% online. All right, so if we kind of go to the right-hand side and just kind of quantify all of these trends that we've seen, we have about 30% of consumers now, moving online for all of their household care products. So that's getting critical mass as well. But what I think is more important is the online share. So if you think back to the previous chart, we had an online share that was a little bit shy of 13%. I think it was 12.8 was the average for consumer packaged goods. We'll look at online for household care. It's double that almost at almost 23%. So this is obviously something we can't ignore when you have almost a quarter of your business now shifting to online. And obviously that's being fueled by the Omnishopper. So I have a question for you. You alluded to the fact that you shop online. So when it comes to cleaning products, would you consider yourself someone who buys cleaning products both in a physical store and online, or would you say you're 100% online when it comes to cleaning?
Both. If I plan, which I'm not good at planning these things, but if I plan it, I'll actually do it online because, there's no immediate need. But if I run out of something and I need it right away, well, I have a CVS right literally a block away. So I could just run in and out of there at any time. So, and I think that's a part of it is the proximity because I'm in a very densely populated area. I have 5 grocery stores, 3 or 4 drugstores within literally 8 blocks of my apartment. So it's just too easy for me to just run out. And especially with the weather getting better, it's too easy to just run out and come back in. But if I give it a little forethought, and it's like, okay, I'm going to need these things, then it's just easier to buy it online, especially now in New York. They have the paper bag mandates. So a lot of these paper bags are just not good to hold. If you hold a jug of laundry detergent and a few other items, they break. So it's just and I always forget to bring, I have a pile of about 20 bags, the reusable bags.
Reusable,
because I'd forget them. I'd go to the store, I'd have to buy one, and then I'd forget them again. So just like with those umbrellas, I just have a whole bunch of these things piling up, and I forget to bring them. So So because of that, I just bounce back and forth between them.
Yeah, I'm the same way as well, because like shopping online, it requires planning. And I think cleaning products as well is also part of a major shop as well. And so we think about the fact that it has less purchase frequency than, say, some food products. So people are maybe going to the store more frequently for those food products. And cleaning is not really impulsive either. It tends to be more of a planned purchase, why it makes sense. It's part of a bigger shopping trip as well. So I'm glad you said you're a dual person, because you would be very unique. You'd be the elephant in the room if you were part of that exclusive online. So if you think about the exclusive online, it's about 2% of shoppers for when it comes to household cleaning products and care products. It's about 2% of us that do 100% online shopping. So the omni shopper is 50% of the shoppers. So half of us are similar to what you're doing. I'm the same way as well, where we're shopping both online and the physical stores. Now, this chart itself looks very kind of simplistic, and it's kind of a Venn diagram to kind of isolate the shoppers. But this is something that's a unique benefit of our omni shopper analysis, where now we can bring it all together and we're looking at the same individual, the same person across their online habits and their physical store habits. So we can actually create this, which is actually a new capability. And I'm glad that we're able to show that, because even if you look at this, the power of the omni shopper, they're 50% of the shoppers, so half. But look at their sales, 60% of sales. So what does this tell us? Well, the omni shoppers are the big spenders. They spend 20% more than average. So that's why, as a manufacturer, as a retailer, you can't ignore the omni shoppers, because they're the big spenders, right? And obviously they probably spend a little bit more. They probably go back to the store a little bit more frequently as well, or have the need more frequently. So they're going to help you drive your growth strategy moving forward. Exclusive bricks and mortar, still important. Half the shoppers are going there as well. Not as important on sales, but it really talks about the fact you can't put all your eggs in one basket, right? You need to also be in a physical store and also in an online store, because if someone has a need to buy your product, then they're going to go to a digital world. And then I kind of talked about it with the new store formats, where there's been a lot of compression of the center of the store, where a lot of the cleaning products are merchandised today. So retailers are looking to kind of cut assortment, right? And these stores are also becoming fulfillment centers for, like, the click and collect and those type of online shopping formats. So they're actually limiting their assortment, because they're just going to probably, merchandise a lot of the products that are going to provide the most general needs for consumers, that are going to turn faster. And then once again, they're just going to look to, have those product turns that are going to drive profit for them as well. Where if you move to an omni world or an online world, well, you have all your variety, all your selection, right? So I'm one of those consumers as well. If there's something I'm really loyal to and it's no longer in my physical store, I don't go, oh, I'll just buy with what's beside it on the shelf. A lot of people do that, but if it's something I'm really, really passionate about it, I just say, you know what, I'll wait till I get home and I'm going to order it online. And then once I buy it online, now I'm sold, right? Like, that's my new way of ordering as well. So that impacts some of our behaviors.
Yeah, I think it's a great way, a great opportunity for brands to up their direct to consumer game, or to partner with the retailers more online too, for those retailers that offer kind of endless aisle, because like you said, they're consolidating the amount, they're really focusing on a limited set of assortment, but this way it gives the consumers an opportunity to get those other ones. The key is just making sure they message the consumer correctly and let them know, hey, if you can't find it here, you can buy it with us directly, or you can go to this retailer's website.
Right, absolutely. So that's why, our Omni Shopper product we just launched is so powerful, because it's answering a lot of, I'll call them basic questions, but they're actually very complex, and now we can answer those things. So think about leakage, right? So how much is a bricks and mortar store losing to the online world? How much are brands losing to the online world? So think about shopping at Walmart. When I go online, do I stick at walmart.com or do I go to Amazon? Right. So now we can start tracking the consumer and understand who is truly your competitive set. Right. And even when it comes to brands, knowing that what some of the people buy at a physical store is a certain brand, they may change to another brand when they go online, and vice versa. So it really allows us that kind of like very cohesive one view to answer some of those questions that everyone's been asking over the last number of years, particularly when the fact that online's growing so fast, these questions are bubbling right to the top faster than they've ever been before.
Yeah, and as we saw in the beginning of the pandemic, there were a lot of retailers that started working with brands in a drop ship capacity to extend their product availability. So, for example, in the store, they may have run out of some items, but then they can find it on their website from smaller suppliers, new suppliers that have maybe a gourmet version in a category. You know, it was just a way to keep product availability because it was flying off the shelves at such a velocity, nobody would be able to keep up.
Right, absolutely. Okay, I'm gonna keep testing you with questions. It seems to be going well. So far you're getting most of the answers right. You've been passing so far. So the logical question when you look at these, particularly the Omnishopper when it comes to household care, who do you think the Omnishopper is? Like from a demographic profile, do you have a theory?
I have a couple because sure you have the digitally native, younger crew.
Mm-hmm.
But then you do have a lot more older people that are getting in the game. I mean, look, you got grandmas on Facebook and, they're exploring it. But then also who has the need? You may have those people in the middle where they have families and they have a lot of stuff going on. So I would say maybe around the middle-ish, older than millennials, maybe Gen Z, Gen X, because they got families and kids around the house, and they're very busy, both managing their careers and their kids, and they don't have a lot of time.
Right. Okay. Well, you're right in the sense of understanding the general profile. And when you look at demographics, every single household type is shopping online. Mm-hmm. But when you actually look at those people that are spending more than their fair share, this is the groups that really score higher than average. So we see obviously income plays a role. So those households that are making more than 100,000, they spend 33% more online as well. When you look at age range, you're starting to see those leading edge of the millennials in that 30 to 34 age as well. They tend to be fairly educated, but we're also starting to see, the lower ranges of Gen X as well, the 35 to 44. That's coming to the surface. When we look at ethnicity, Asians score a little bit higher as well at 28%. So your assumption around the family component is bang on as well, but the family dynamic on this one's a little bit different, where it tends to be younger households in new families, and that's a function of the age, right? When you think of people that are age 30 to 44, they're more likely to have children under the age of 6. So those two kind of go hand in hand as well. So that is kind of the nature of the demographic. Now, this is the profile of the demographic that are buying household care products online. That have shifted online. So we still have half of the population that are still doing the physical stores. So that's why we're looking at that Omnishopper, that 50%. And that's why these results are maybe a little bit more polarizing, because you're not talking about the total shopper, you're talking about half the shopper that fall into that Omni definition. Gotcha. So any surprises on this one?
No, that actually makes sense.
Okay. All right. So the other thing I want to tease out, and you did a really good job when you were answering the question, the fact that, when we think of online, we tend to have this bias, right? That it tends to skew to younger, more people that are engaged with technology. You're absolutely right. They're the ones that are kind of leading the charge, but we don't want to forget about some of the older generations as well. And this is a great example of how fast older consumers are migrating online as well. Yes, they're not scoring higher than average as far as some of the growth numbers over 90%. Now, this is looking at growth of food online. So I just use this as a comparison because food is about 70% of our spend. Food now is the #1 category share, outperforming household products and also health and beauty products. They were the leaders. Now food's come on board. So I think COVID's been a game changer where we've seen that shift in spend. And the reason why I wanted to provide food as a benchmark is because obviously cleaning's related to food consumption, but then you think about cleaning, it tends to be part of that major shop where obviously people are doing grocery shopping and putting a lot of things in the basket, and cleaning products can just tag along as well. So let's not forget about the importance, particularly those older consumers. Look at age 65 plus. You
Wow.
know, their online spending last year went up 81%. So they're a little bit slower, but it's to be expected. They're maybe not the early adopters, but they're catching up, and we're starting to see that spend magnify as well. Now, I'm not going to get my mother to shop online. I'm not. She's well above that 65, and she's set in her ways. She's still going to the physical store because for her, the physical store is a social outing, right? She runs into friends and family and things like that. She knows the people in her local store. So for her, I'm never going to get her to shop online as well. So you know, some people are set in their ways, but we're starting to see a lot of growth rate across the board.
Now, my parents are doing much more online. Especially since after you know, once COVID hit, they had no choice. I mean,
Yep.
they're in that age range where, you know, they were recommended not to leave the house, so they got used to buying a lot of stuff online, and now they do in between. They do both.
Yep,
They'll
absolutely.
go to the store on a week. They have their vaccinations, so they're getting out a little bit more, but you know, they're still mixing it in with
Yeah.
online.
Well, we've done surveys in the past, and we've asked people, you know, like we've done some online shopping segmentation. It's important to understand that the market potential is never going to be 100%. And the reason for that is around 15% of the population in the US, and we see similar results in Canada as well, is that they don't have access to internet or smartphone or smart technology to do the online shopping, right? Because, and I know that the government's trying to make that a basic human right, a basic need to increase, you know, Wi-Fi and just access to technology right across, because there's certain parts of the country will people don't have access, or they can't afford the subscription, so they may have to go to, you know, public Wi-Fi and stuff. So there is limitations. We also had about 20% of people that go, I'm technology adverse. I don't know how this works. I have a phone, I have a computer, but I'm not good at this stuff. Now, we've actually seen a big improvement on that. So I think what's happened is that COVID actually has forced people to sit down and actually learn it. So that's been, you know, a game changer as well. That we're starting to see more and more people jump on board, just become more comfortable, and they're liking it. I think that's the thing. People realize, oh, that's actually pretty easy, right, and convenient.
And I think, yeah, to that point, at the same time as they're getting better at it, the technology is getting easier to use.
Yes.
You know, especially like apps on the phone or whatever, it's getting a lot more intuitive. So it's easier for people to just open it up and figure it out.
Yeah, and it's going to get even easier. You think about, you know, the technology where we're moving, where it's you know, virtual reality, where I can go down a digital store with a shopping cart and just throw things in, right? I don't have to worry about typing, right? Because, you know, a lot of times you don't know how to spell properly in order to find things online, or you got to navigate these complicated hierarchies. But I also find that technology and artificial intelligence starting to learn people's behaviors and maybe starting to automatically populate your shopping cart, going, well, you buy this every time, let me just add it in for you and you take it out if you don't need it. I think those are the things that just make it so much more convenient for people, or you remind them, oh, you bought this, you may want to try this as well.
And then you have voice technology too.
Yes,
It's going to make it easier. This way you don't have to spell ashwagandha supplements, you know.
I know. And it actually, I hear it works well with New York accents too. So there you go.
Well,
All
not
right.
always.
Okay, good to know.
Depends what part of New York you're from.
All right. Okay. Well, we've kind of run through a lot of information so far, and now let's just kind of wrap up on what are some of those key opportunities for cleaning brands. First of all is choice. So we talked about, you know, the polarization that's happening. This polarization is going to continue with us as we come out of COVID-19 and start going back to normal. There's a lot of newly constrained people out there. So we have to keep in mind that when it comes to meeting consumer needs, it's very polarizing. So we have to keep in mind that there's a lot of people that are looking for less expensive alternatives. We may see, you know, a shift in growth to, you know, some of those private label brands in the cleaning segments. So if you're a national brand, you got to compete against that. So you also, once again, knowing that people are more value focused, not everyone, but a certain part of the population will be, is that we got to keep reminding them the value and the efficacy that our product provide. And, you know, it's worth the extra little spend as well. So it's worth that brand tax that sometimes our products are faced with. Next is availability. And once again, this is all under the umbrella of the OmniShopper, right? We have one person, but they're shopping at many different retail formats, and we've changed our behaviors. Everyone's running after the same shopper, the same dollar. So now you need to be smarter, and you have to figure out where those consumers are going. And we kind of talked about that today, is that with the OmniShopper, more people are moving online as well. And when we see people move online, we have to answer that very valuable question. Is it incremental to my business? Did I win the sale or did I lose the sale? And if I lost the sale, well, why was that? Do I not have the same assortment either online or in physical stores? Or is there something else about a demographic or need that I'm not meeting that could be an opportunity for us to look at? And I think we can also learn. There's a lot of, when you go online, there's a lot of small brands. I think you talk about a lot of niche brands that are out there. But I think the big guys, they have to keep an eye on those small players because they're nimble. They're coming out with a lot of new and creative ideas. And you can get some of those ideas from seeing what the smaller, brands are doing as well.
And I think, relative to point two, availability, I think there were a lot of lessons learned if the brick and mortar retailers paid attention to, they all went out of stock with paper goods and different staples within a center store. And some of them plugged them in with some new brands. And if they check their data and see which of those new brands succeeded, did very well, and which ones didn't, they may have an opportunity to maybe not incorporate those brands permanently on the shelf, but to add those brands onto their website, as an add-on because the consumers were already exposed to it and maybe had a good experience.
Oh, absolutely. And even we see that as well over the last couple of years, a lot of mergers and acquisitions as well. Like you see that competitor that's online and you don't have that same space, you don't have that same loyal consumer. Well, you potentially could acquire them, expand your portfolio. So it's an easier way in as well as opposed to starting from scratch. So we've seen that as a big driver. There's been a lot of that in the marketplace as well. All right, number three is convenience. And I think you alluded to this as a lot as to why you shop online as well. And I think, the new reality is that a lot of us have changed our behaviors. And we've been doing this for over a year now where we've changed our behaviors. So some of these, changes have now become the new shopping habits as well. So I think once again, we have to look for ways how we can make our products more convenient for consumers to buy, or new ways for us to find us. And whether that's subscription reminders or just even memberships and even loyalty programs and all these things are available at Access, I think we have to once again look to make sure that we're always looking for a way to reach the consumer that is convenient for them, knowing that they're, splitting their spend between online and offline. And then finally, personalization. And the reason why I put this one on here as well is that, when people go to a physical store, you actually have a lot of opportunities to interact and engage with them, right? Because they're basically a captive audience, right? You're walking around the stores, you have displays, you can have shelf talkers, and you can advertise in the store to kind of reach those consumers. Now that most of us are not necessarily looking through the physical flyers like we were, or we're not, going to the store, we're sitting down and making our grocery list in a digital environment. We're actually using apps and more of those tools to kind of build our shopping list and also making that ultimate purchase decision. So that's where we also have to maybe adjust our communication from mass to my and making it more personalized and more relevant to the individual. Because this is really the fun part, I think, about digital shopping and online shopping is that everyone leaves a digital trail. And when you leave a digital trail, it allows you, once again, to learn a little bit more about the shopper, understand their demographics, understand their needs, understand their loyalties, understand their online, offline behaviors. And then you take all that information and then you can customize a message that is more relevant to that consumer. And then when you have relevancy, then obviously it helps builds loyalty as well.
I think personalization is so important, especially now. Consumers, during the pandemic, they spent a lot more time online. They spent a lot more time researching. And I think consumers nowadays want to know, be a little bit better educated about the decisions they're going to make. So in doing all those things that you just said, capturing all that data and information about the shopper needs and how they're shopping, you can craft content. And obviously I'm a big fan of content, but you can craft content towards those consumers that would really, really make you the go-to source for that information. So if it's cleaning products, let's say as an example, eco-friendly cleaning products. That's something that you have a group that's really interested in that, but that's a very great opportunity for information about why these things are important, what kind of products to look for, what type of cleaning, what they accomplish, all this how-to information and just information about these cleaning products and the environment that will just really snap up these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to kind of summarize is that, information makes us smarter, and smarters make us more effective. And then at the end of the day, it benefits our brands, it benefits our categories, it benefits our stores, both online and offline. Because at the end of the day, everyone has the same goal. We want to move our business forward, and we got to do that in a way that is thoughtful and meaningful to the consumer. Because at the end of the day, the consumer is the one that's making that final decision.
Yeah, and speaking of information, thank you so much. This has been awesome information. Really impressed with what you can dig out using the new Omnishopper Solutions Suite. So everybody, check it out. Go to the NielsenIQ website. Check out the suite and all of the stuff, the good insights they can get from it. And Carman, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun and informative too.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, Joe. Have a good one.
Take care.
All right, stay safe.